Hello, I'm Tad Perry. At Ball State University on December 1st, we hosted a conference on gifted and talented education, bringing together some of the nation's foremost authorities in the field. Among those was Dr. Julian Stanley from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, and the directors of the 3 residential academies in the states of North Carolina, Louisiana, and Illinois. We have summarized the proceedings of that day as a way to help you see some of the significant points, some of the significant discussions that took place. We hope it will provide you an overall view of the conference and give you a basis for the conversation, the discussions that will take place in Indiana over the next 4 months as we look at the issue of an Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities for Indiana. I hope this is useful.
Early in the 70s, the U.S. Office of Education developed a national definition of gifted. And you people are at a gifted conference, so I'm sure you're aware of the definition as it was developed by the federal government. But they made it very clear in that definition of gifted education that differentiated programming was not an option. It was a requirement. It wasn't just a frill. It wasn't just a nice thing to have, but it was absolutely essential if these kids were going to maximize their potential. And they said 2 things, and I want to quote from that 1972 legislation. The nation's greatest resource for solving critical national problems in areas of national concern is its gifted and talented children. Unless the special abilities of gifted and talented children are developed during their elementary and secondary school years, their special potential for assisting the nation will be lost. Not may be lost, not might be lost, but will be lost.
I believe that every state of the Union which has at least 300 national merit semifinalists each year should consider establishing a residential high school of science and mathematics.
Well, gifted kids have unique needs. They need to be challenged by mastery level work, by exposure to new areas of research and information, by experiences that create and the understanding of human values, by discussions with intellectual peers, by activities at complex levels of thought, and through opportunities for divergent production and for the creation and synthesis of new information.
And I suspect Indiana has the same kind of poor, rural schools, small schools that certainly could not afford the kind of faculty, the kind of resources, and that most important resource of all, time, to provide for the needs of some of their students.
The Illinois Academy, like the other academies, are really bold and important initiatives. They not only provide superior learning environments for gifted kids, but at least equally as importantly, they serve as a catalyst to improve the educational delivery system for all students. We have many outstanding teachers in Illinois and certainly across the country in math and science, but there is no way that a secondary school can provide the kind of intensive and quality programming that a residential academy can provide when you have the aggregation of talent that you do and when you have 0.5% of a gifted population. That simply cannot be replicated. We have heard many arguments in Illinois, and you probably no doubt have heard of New Trier High School. It was written up in Fortune 500 magazine as the best public high school in the country. Even New Trier doesn't have the concentration of talent that we have at the Illinois Math and Science Academy. And so I think, you have to be very clear in your arguments when people are saying to you, we have some terrific schools, we don't really need academies like this. It simply isn't so. That synergy that I think Dick spoke of and Chuck spoke of also cannot be replicated in another kind of environment.
Some of the most exciting times to be around the school is after classes have ended at 3:30, to see how many are still there at the computers, in the labs, doing special projects, working on independent study, talking to teachers, to be around in the evening and see that this goes on. Our computer rooms are open 7 days a week to 10:30 at night, and they may be supervised by one resident advisor who lives in the building, but and there may be some work service students who are there to make sure that if something goes wrong, they help patch it up. But the respect the students have for each other and for the property shows up in those kinds of situations. The library is open 7 days a week. Our teachers, I mentioned, on duty one evening a week, and many oftener than that, provides what, as these students reflect on their own experience, they realize no matter how fine a high school they might have come from, that this resource, accessibility to these kinds of resources is something that could not be possible without it being a residential school.
But the kids reinforce over and over and over again that this is the right thing to do. They tell us that the first time they've really been challenged, that they feel safe to explore and to think the kinds of things they've been thinking for a long time. They feel free to study and work when they want to. They're respected for their ideas, and they feel less competition, which you would not expect, or at least we didn't expect. We did the same thing. We said we're not going to rank, we're not going to do GPA. We do give grades, and we did give C's and D's, and when we did them, the kids weren't devastated. The bottom didn't fall out. One young gal knocked on my door and said, "Dr. M, I guess you were serious." And that's a good lesson, because when they get to the university, they will have learned how to manage their time and to sort their laundry appropriately. Teachers tell us very similar kinds of things. One teacher said to me, he has been teaching for 23 years. He has never felt more challenged, more energized, and more appreciated in his entire life by both the administration and the kids. And one teacher said he has his PhD in physics. He's worked at a university level for a long time. He said, I have never been in a place that has such a real sense of community, and my colleagues have said the same kind of thing. You have to select people that are real nurturing people as well as subject area specialists. The same physics teacher said, you know, I've been teaching physics for 20 years. There was a question that was asked in class today that I have never heard, which put a twist in physics that I have never thought of in my entire life. And he said, it just blew me away. And that's the kind of place it is. It really just kind of blows you away. Parents also tell us that it's the right place for their child to be. And I guess my feeling is that I don't think parents would send their kids if they didn't think it was the right place for their kids to be. That's just a simple argument. You know, why do you think it's all right for a 12-year-old to come? I guess my response is, if the parents think it's okay with me. I mean, no one's twisting their arm. No one went out and, you know, held a gun to their neck. We sent out applications and 800 kids applied. We anticipate we'll have between 1,500 and 2,000 kids apply this year, again, because they are looking for educational options. And if we can't be a profession that looks at educational options, then we are really in a very, very sorry state.
Now, the location of the school is, I would say, should be located close enough to a highly selective college or university that students can quickly walk there to take college courses they need to supplement the high school offerings.
Well, I know that one of the concerns about an academy like this, and my colleagues have mentioned it, is the fact that we'll be skimming the cream off the crop. However, my feeling is, when we talk about less than 0.5%, we're talking about maybe 2 kids in most high schools. I've also heard the phrase cloistered elitism. And I decided I'd look up elitism just to see what it really says in the dictionary. And elitism, as defined by Webster, is separation according to social class. And I've described the makeup and the composition of the Illinois Academy, and my colleagues have described theirs. There is not a separation by social class. We have kids who are come from very affluent families, and I have kids on food stamps. The Academy is an aggregation of talent, just like the Chicago Bears, and that's okay. Just like the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, which is touted as a national treasure, and that's okay. Somehow it's okay to aggregate talent, whether it's in sports or music or other kinds of things. It is not okay to aggregate talent in an educational setting. It seems to make us nervous. I don't know why that is, but it simply is. And I think we really need to be really forthright about that argument. The context in which I put gifted education is identical to the context of Public Law 94-142. This is their free and appropriate public education. And when you're comparing costs, and when you're comparing human resources, and when you're comparing whatever else you want to compare it to special education residential placement. That's the fair comparison. Don't compare it to how much it costs to educate a high school kid in Indiana, or in Illinois, or North Carolina for that matter. That's a bogus argument. Compare it to what it costs to educate one special education student in the state in a residential program, and then you'll find out that gifted education is really extraordinarily cost-effective.
Long-term benefits to the individual state and nation should make the school a wise investment.
You will meet a tremendous amount of criticism and opposition. I think part of it is because of the unfounded myths that govern gifted education. People think that cream always rises to the top, and that you should just leave gifted kids, leave them alone and they'll do their own thing and they'll achieve. It simply is not true. That without specific differentiated programming that meets their needs, they simply will not maximize their own potential. Our legislation speaks to two purposes. One, that we have to develop an exemplary program for students of rare talent in math and science so that they can work on humane solutions to the world's problems. And the second was really to serve as a laboratory for research and experimentation and innovation in curriculum development and instructional strategy development and material development throughout the state of Illinois.
The school does more than just serve that group of 475 students. We have worked with over 3,000 teachers who come to our campus for concentrated workshops during the summer, or come to regional centers out throughout the state where our faculty go out and put on workshops, usually in science, mathematics, but not entirely, occasionally in counseling of gifted students, or special techniques in developing electronic access for libraries and things of that nature. So that our service, the justification for the school, the basis for our ongoing support from the legislature, an appropriation each year of now close to $5 million for operating and about $12 million over the 7 years for buildings, is based on the fact that our General Assembly and the local school superintendents, who often are the source of information for the members of the legislature, seem to be satisfied that they are benefiting. The constituents throughout the school system are all benefiting by the kinds of things that emanate from the school in its program development and its curriculum development.
At the present time, we are teaching via computer telecommunications courses to high schools 100 miles distant from our location. We teach a calculus course, we teach a survey of the arts course via computer and a telephone hookup. That's one of the outreach programs that we're engaged in. We also do work for teachers, teacher enrichment, professional gatherings, etc.
But increasingly, through the service we provide to all the schools through our outreach program, we have shown that we're serving more than just the few students that come to our campus. But there's been an impact, the ripple effect, throughout the entire state in many, many ways.
As we're talking about the outreach functions for an Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities, I am standing in a classroom which is used by a high school geometry class, televised from Ball State to 4 Indiana high schools currently. As a sample, this shows what the Academy could do as a televised class going out to any of the school districts around the state of Indiana to supplement much of the work that they do in their regular curriculum and in gifted and talented work.
And we're going to ask them to call in first this morning so we can make sure that they're not only on the air, but we can maybe get some of their questions answered. And let's take those apart. Back with us, Arlene?
Hello.
Are you with us, Arlene?
Uh-huh.
All right. Let's take these overlapping triangles apart and look at the one with the 6-foot side, okay? Now, how long would this side be of this triangle that I pulled out of there?
Y plus Z.
Y plus Z. And let's take this other triangle, this big one, out of there. And how high is this side here?
12.
12. Get this over here on the side now. What's the other pair then?
CL.
CL times
NN.
MN.
NM.
NM.
Yeah.
Seems like I would have had those things. Oh, I see. It doesn't make any difference which way you put those down. All right? Sure does. Is that it? And
you cannot have ethical decision-making in science without a strong humanities program, and I would wholeheartedly endorse that. That part of what we are really training is really people who can make ethical decisions within the context of a technological society. I'm reading an incredible book right now called The Whale and the Nuclear Reactor. And it's by Langdon Winter, and he starts off by going to Los Alamos, and as he's looking at this incredible nuclear reactor, this berm rising out of the ground, he sees the blue whale off in the background spouting, and it's kind of a juxtaposition of nature and man. And he talks about the fact that we are in an era of what he calls technological somnambulism. We are sleepwalking our way through the technological era, totally oblivious to what we are really doing. Well, I think that's one of the obligations that institutions like our academies really have, to not only give kids information and provide them with a wealth of highly accelerated, enriched information, but also to give them opportunities to use and to talk about that information in highly ethical ways. We are separating a group of people from our population, that's true. But in my judgment, we are separating them so they may serve all of us. The Academy is operated in such a way that students of rare talent are recruited throughout the state from all racial, social, and economic strata. In our judgment, it is the gifted student for whom education should mean the most. None can potentially derive greater benefits from a close immersion in the intellectual and technical heritage of our civilization, and none can potentially contribute more than young people of rare talent. Not to provide all that can be done and to encourage their contribution seems to me to be a profound misreading of the concept of public welfare. In an article printed in Educational Leadership not too long ago, Isaac Wurtzip, whom you know is a professor of mathematics at the University of Chicago, said the following, and I quote, "We must acknowledge that an educated population and a well-trained workforce are essential to the recovery of our country's dynamic spirit and economic strength. We must go beyond mere recognition of the problem and mount a serious effort, a genuine national mobilization for education. To give up, to procrastinate, or to plan only for the short term would be to mortgage our freedom and our future."
So what you had in this situation was a legislator working side by side with an educator and a very influential legislator to formulate the school.
From an educational perspective, I think we had to develop a credible argument that this is a vital and necessary institution. There really is kind of a love-hate relationship, I think, in this country about gifted and talented people. It's okay to segregate people of talent when you're talking about a football team or you're talking about a symphony orchestra, but when we talk about putting them into a school, that makes people a little bit nervous. So first we had to establish, I think, the credibility that this is an imperative. In order for gifted kids to reach their potential, they need differentiated instruction.
The Louisiana School was created by act of the Louisiana legislature in 1981 without a dissenting vote.
Thanks for taking the time to observe and watch the tape that we made available to you. We hope it's been useful. It's been a basis for some of the continuing conversation and dialogue on the Indiana Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities. As we review the issue in the months ahead, hopefully this will provide some guidance. If specific questions have been raised in the tape that you would like to have some responses to, please feel free to give us a call. Again, thanks and best wishes for a new year.